Guess we go off this one up here.
Sure.
Call the meeting to order. Stand for the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Wagner,
Here.
Commissioner Magyar is Neil, he is absent. Commissioner Satanovich,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Linder,
Here.
Commissioner Itica is absent, and Chair Kraschauer.
I'm here. All right. Do we have a motion to adopt agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as is.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Perfect. Business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a brief presentation about any land use planning issue or county concern that is not on the agenda. We have nobody in our presence here, and it doesn't look like we have anybody online either. Anybody else have any business from the public? All right. We're gonna move right along. Clear and objective standards project, line item number 2.
Okay, so this is the beginning of draft 2. We are breaking it into 2 parts. So today, at your December meeting, you'll have the second draft of Articles 1, 5, and 6. Article 1 is related to the definitions primarily, and Article 5 is special districts. Article 6 has to deal with environmental resources. And so we've laid out the changes in 2 different documents, so you can pick and choose which document you want to work off of. The one document that's kind of more nicely formatted is really intended to be more of a summary of the changes, and it breaks it out article by article and gives you the summary of those changes and any notes related to why changes might have been made. The other one is the actual strike-through underlined format of the language that will go into the ordinance when it's ready for the public hearings. And so, again, Article 1 deals primarily with definitions. Article 5, you'll see that we've continued to make changes to the geologic hazard permitting requirements. And a lot of this, with the exception of bringing in new maps, was originally proposed a couple of years ago when we were looking at changing the maps and updating our geologic hazard permitting process. So we've taken out a lot of language you'll see on page 66, 67, page 65, for requirements that we don't use any longer. So we don't do a preliminary testing and have people come in and then have them, based upon the results of those tests, then go through the full permitting process. We just either have a permit process or a waiver process now. So we deleted the language that's in section 5.3040 and 5.3045, and then just continuing to refine it and try to make it clearer, easier to understand, and where we can to make it a little bit less onerous for people who have to go through the process. Those are probably the most substantial changes that you'll see in this Part 1, Draft 2. Then in Article 6, where we deal with environmental and resource protection, again, just trying to put in standards that can be quantifiable. There isn't a whole lot about housing in Article 6. It deals mainly with the estuary, riparian buffers, and things like that. But where we did find regulations that were tied to housing, we again tried to make them as objective and clear as possible. Next month, we'll be bringing back Articles 2, 3, and 4, which deal with our permitting process, with development standards for parking, signage, sidewalks, streets, and then Article 4, which is all the zones, and again, just pulling things out and putting them into the table format just to make it easier to read, but you'll see that in January. And then depending upon how January goes, staff can either come back with a third draft in February, or we could just start the public hearing process in February. So that's kind of at where you think you're at and what you would like to see from staff. Other than that, I'm really here to answer your questions today.
Is any of this gonna be affected by what's going on with the FEMA stuff?
Potentially, because obviously housing will be affected by the FEMA biological opinion. If we get to the point where we adopt a model ordinance, then we would have to make sure that those requirements are written in a clear and objective form while still meeting the requirements of the Endangered Species Act. So we have set that project aside for a little bit, and I'll talk more about that under the director's report. But yeah, it will affect the Law Doc housing amendments.
I just wanna see, okay, you guys go through all this work, and then we go through, and then it's all thrown for a loop, because we don't even know where we're at yet with the other stuff.
Well, the clear and objective standards have to be adopted and through the appeal process by July 1st of 2025. The model ordinance, if that continues to move forward for the buyout, has to be in place by July 31st. So
Close.
it's close, but there's just so many variables right now that you just don't know what's going to happen.
Any of the other commissioners have anything that they'd like to comment on this?
I just had one question.
Mhm.
On page 63 of the packet, the 5.3, section 5.3025, and then subsection 3, the geological hazard reports, and then it's I guess, who can prepare them, B and C, well, I guess all of them really. And it doesn't really say it has to be, it doesn't specify what type of qualifications, sort of. I guess it infers that it would be an engineer because they have a stamp, but I don't know if that's, I know we were trying to make it so that we weren't putting everybody in a box with those type of professionals that aren't available, but I don't know, does this say what we need it to say, or I guess I was curious what everybody thought, if that is good enough, or.
So we did do an amendment earlier this year, 2412. So on page 63, it's subsection 4, where we did amend that language so that, and actually there's another section, that's not the one, where we did loosen up who could prepare the reports.
Right.
And we referenced basically the language, I think, says something along the lines of, you are self-certifying that you are qualified to prepare this report.
Yep.
So we did not touch that language. That language is still in there.
Okay.
Just not seeing the exact section where it is.
I do remember seeing that in here. First section. Requirements.
It's subsection 3B, a description of the qualifications of the professionals that prepared the report. If multiple professionals contributed to the report, each shall individually sign and stamp their own work products. And then above that in subsection 1, the guidelines for preparing the engineering geologic report spells out who is qualified to do what under state law. And so by signing their work and stamping it, they are self-certifying that they are qualified to prepare the work that they've done.
Okay.
Standard geologic practices and science and engineering principles. Yeah, I just see it as an engineer or a geotech. That's how I read it, but maybe that's not. I mean, like I'm reading B and it says engineering geological reports or engineering geological or geotechnical engineering reports. It keeps referring to an engineer or geotechnical engineer.
Which,
I think we were trying to,
which page are you on?
on the same page, 63, I was looking at section 1, subsection B.
Right.
When we changed that earlier, we were trying to eliminate that only a geotechnical engineer could do this, right? And,
Right.
but we didn't, did we define that an engineer, not just like me, I have no, no degree in engineering. I couldn't go self-certify myself and say, hey, I looked at this land and I think it's good to go, and sign a piece of paper saying that I think it's good to go. That wouldn't fly, right? I mean,
No.
because some of this is kind of, you know, if you're self-certifying, but,
Well, the professional is self-certifying, so there are still some requirements under state law about who can prepare
okay,
different types of reports. So you can't self-certify that you put together a geotechnical report and you specified how you're gonna construct your building unless you hold those qualifications. So I can't do it because I'm not qualified.
that's where it refers to the state law.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to go back and, okay,
Right.
that's,
And we are basically taking them at their word. We're not checking people's credentials and, you know, verifying that they have a degree and who's
Well, I mean, now I
qualified.
understand, because I mean, we're not qualified to do it, we're not really qualified to decide if they're right or not.
Right.
And that makes sense.
So,
do any other commissioners have any, comments, concerns, changes, anything? No?
does your, commission think that as we move forward, we'll do the remainder of draft 2 in January? Do you think that you would like to see a third draft, or do you want to make that decision come January? Or do you want to start scheduling public hearings for February? Do you have a sense of where you would like to go right now?
I think what we've looked at so far, we've been through it, and there was pretty minimal changes, really. I think we could get through the last part, and then I think we'd be ready to go to the hearings.
How many articles are there total?
6,
So this is 1, 5, and 6.
yeah.
And then by January, we'll have a draft with all of them complete?
We could, because we've got a second draft of 1, 5, and 6 that you're looking at today. We could just put the second draft of 2, 3, and 4 in with this, so then you have the whole entire document. And the only reason I'm asking, it doesn't matter either way, I just need to be able to send my notice in to the state so we can start scheduling the public hearings. So I'm just
Okay.
trying to keep us on
What
track.
are the articles remaining, and what's in them?
They probably have the meat of the, changes. So Article 2 is where we talk about the different procedures for permitting, and we spell out the process, the requirement notice, the notification requirements. And we're gonna be making some very significant changes to that, because we're going from 7 different review procedure types to 4, and combining and simplifying things. And then Article 3, there's not a whole lot in there. It's, we've already updated parking in a separate ordinance recently, and then through the Law Doc Housing Amendment, so that's pretty up to date. There may be some changes to, the internal circulation with the sidewalks and the bike paths and the things like that that we talked about, where they are really designed more for urbanized areas and larger developments, and not as it's written currently, where a single-family home has to come in and do all this stuff, or a duplex. So we'll be making changes to that. And then Article 4 is really more reorganization, where we are taking the lists of things and moving them into a table format, so you can just read across, find your zone, find out if what you want to do, what the procedure is for that. We updated a lot of Article 4 when we did the housing amendments that just passed. So that one should have minimal substantial changes. It's really going to be more formatting changes. So Article 2, I think, will have the meat of the changes in it.
We've discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was probably a year ago now.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
This is,
I mean, we can evaluate after January and see where we're at. In the meantime, I can put the notice in, and if we need to move the public hearing back a month, we can do that as well. But I just kind of wanted to have a sense of where your commission was.
Okay.
this is Kerry Johnson. I'd be comfortable moving ahead with the hearing portion of it. And I did have one question on page 19. You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, on ownership, it talks about the existence of legal or equitable interest in a lot or parcel of, or tract. What would the difference be if you have a legal, what's an equitable interest in a lot? What would that be versus a legal interest? The existence of a legal or equitable interest in a lot, parcel, or tract.
I would have to run that by our county council to see if he has thoughts about that. It's old language in the code that's been there forever, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer.
Right, it may have a very specific meaning that I'm not aware of, but I'm just trying to figure out if we're doing clear and objective standards. I don't really understand that. So that was it. And then on page 21, you have on a county road, down towards the middle of the page, or more towards the bottom, or even a private road, it's defined as a way within a dedicated public right-of-way, which has been formally accepted by the Board of County Commissioners for access and vehicular circulation purposes, and which is maintained by the county. Is that calling it, changing that to an improved travel surface to changing that to a way? Is that clearer, or is that what we should? I don't know. It's just a little bit, doesn't quite read right to me.
So the reason I suggested removing an improved travel surface is if we were to encounter a situation where the right-of-way was there, but the road had not been constructed yet.
Mm-hmm.
It does have implications for setback requirements, even if the road isn't built yet, it could still be a county right-of-way where the road hasn't been fully constructed or extended. So I just wanted to clarify that you didn't actually have to have the final road in there, that it could just be the right-of-way. That's a county right-of-way. We can certainly change that back if that makes it clear to say improved travel surface, or maybe there's some other language that we could put in.
What if you just left that first part out and just said a dedicated public right-of-way, which has been formally accepted? I guess we're kind of splitting hairs here. It's just an editing, kind of a little editing nightmare, I guess. But I'm okay with it. It's not a big deal at all.
Okay, we'll give it some more thought and see if there's something better that we can come up with.
Okay, that's all I really had. Most of it is, there's been a lot of work that's gone into this and to clear things up and make it simpler, and I think it's a good start.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How loaded are our?
I was gonna talk about that.
For, February and March, I mean, is it?
It's, enjoy this break right now. We will be loading up in the next few meetings, so, in January, January may still be pretty light. We're gonna talk about the upcoming fiscal year work plan for fiscal year 25-26. There's a possibility the EOA will be ready by that point in time, but I suspect it probably won't be. And then we will have the remainder of draft 2 of the clear and objective standards. So January is probably okay, but then come February into March, we are looking at, probably 2 additional goal exceptions for the Army Corps that are gonna be coming in probably this month. We will be looking at, adoption of, amendments to update goals 16, 17, and 18 for the comp plan. That process is just about complete. Depending on where we're at with, clear and objective standards, the public hearings for that will probably occur in February, March. And then, the EOA will probably be February-ish, I'm thinking, which is what we know about. And then depending on what happens with FEMA, probably in March-ish, we will, be bringing a model ordinance back if we need to. So February, March is gonna be piled pretty heavy right now, unfortunately.
I have no problem moving forward with this. I was just gonna say if February was gonna get really stacked and March was gonna be a little less, I would rather spread them out rather than
Okay.
stack them, you know, if we have 4 or 5 hearings or whatnot. I would rather have per meeting
Yeah.
instead.
So, the EOA and the clear and objective standards, we would have, and the comp plan goals, we can play those by ear. So I'll try not to schedule more than 2 public hearings. But I do know the Army Corps is coming in with a couple more applications, and these will be, probably more significant than what we reviewed back in October, so.
Okay. Anybody else? Guys have any comments? No? No? Okay. Thank you. Project status report.
Yeah, so, things are starting to move, which is good. We did several public hearings on November 13th with the board. They adopted the Army Corps goal exceptions and text amendments and map amendments. They did choose a PICM, the pre-implementation compliance measure, and we sent that notice off to FEMA on November 18th. The board, if we have to move forward with a PICM, has chosen the model ordinance. We did receive an updated model ordinance from FEMA a couple of weeks ago. I looked through it briefly. There doesn't seem to be much that has changed, really. So don't expect any significant changes on that ordinance. We are also still waiting to see, as I said, there's a lot of variables. We know that there is going to be new changes in the administration come January at the federal level. We don't know how that may affect the process. There may be litigation that's filed to get an injunction against the implementation, and we're still waiting to see if that gets filed, and if so, how that plays out in the court system. So we're just basically in a holding pattern right now when it comes to FEMA, and until we get a little bit closer to our July deadline, and we probably will have some more information about how to proceed, or if we need to proceed.
Has that affected anything now? I'm just, like, if someone wants to come in for a permit now, since we're after December 1st, have things stopped? Is there a moratorium? Is there anything going on?
No, so the board declined to move forward with the moratorium. And then what is happening is, at the advice of our land use council, we have notified FEMA that we would move forward with a model ordinance, assuming we need to, and that at this point, because the only regulations we have adopted are the ones that are currently in place that don't comply with FEMA's requirements, those are the ones we are enforcing. So we have a little bit of a backlog of flood permits that got submitted before people thought the board might move forward with a moratorium, so we're processing through those. Rebecca has updated the floodplain applications now so that we can begin tracking the information FEMA has asked us to track starting in January. We just moved forward with just tracking it now, so we get in that process. The amount of stuff that FEMA wants us to track, some of it, I don't know how we're going to track it. But we now have, what is it, a 12 or 14-page application to where it used to be one page. So we've put that in place. But yeah, so right now we're in this weird holding pattern. We haven't changed anything. We think we may have to change something in the future, but we don't know for sure, so we're just in limbo. So there's that. Also on December 13th, the board adopted the Law Duck housing amendments. We have not received a formal notice, but we've kind of been put on notice via email that it's going to be appealed to LUBA. The deadline was yesterday to submit the appeal, so we're still waiting to get the formal notice of appeal, but I think it's going up to LUBA. I feel as if there was something else. And then the short-term rental caps, the second reading of that ordinance and possible adoption is tomorrow evening. We've also been notified by some attorneys that they feel it's a taking and that we cannot do that. So we will wait and see how that one plays out as well. I feel like I'm missing something, but, oh, psilocybin. Nobody appealed the psilocybin, so that is in effect now. So, and that's that.
All right, thank you. Now, director's report.
Yeah, we probably have covered almost everything that was in my report. We do have a virtual meeting, public meeting this evening at 6 o'clock for the update to goals 16, 17, 18. There's a link for that on the county's calendar on our website. And then this Friday from 10 to noon is the fourth meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee to update goals 16, 17, and 18, and that link is also on the calendar. The Housing Task Force will not have their next meeting until January of 2025. They have completed, so they have a grant to look at buildable lands, and so the buildable lands portion of that has been gone through, and that covers all 5 cities and the rural communities in unincorporated Clatsop County. And then they are going to be moving forward with looking at the factors that are impacting housing and some of the population and demographic research along with that. So that's moving forward and will be completed, I think, in 2025. We talked about CAPS, we talked about PICM, we talked about Army Corps, and we talked about schedule. So that's really it. We have a little bit of a break and then start planning for fiscal year 25-26 and looking at our work plan and just processing whatever applications are coming in. That's it.
We're gonna have a busy beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Yep.
Anybody have anything good of the order?
Just one other thing on the work plan. When we do talk about this in January, if you have ideas for things that you would like to suggest that planning be looking at and working on for the fiscal year that begins July 1st and then will run through June 30th, 2026, bring those ideas along. What will happen then is our work plan in draft form gets submitted with our budget in February. And then that document is basically more or less out of our hands as it moves forward through the budget process. So this will be our time to put together our list of things to do for the next fiscal year.
All right. Now, anybody have anything good of the order? No? All right. Everybody has a good, happy holiday season, and see you guys in January.
Yeah,
All right,
same to everyone else.
we're adjourned.
Thank you.